Hey, so make sure you get down here to Marblemount if you're local. For our international listeners, this is a conference today, and the two speakers they have for today is Thomas Sewid. He's an artist and a researcher. They're going to have a Sasquatch calling contest at 11:30, a raffle at 12:45, and Judy Carroll, a Bigfoot researcher, at 1 p.m.
That will be in show two. So make sure you join us again for a second show right after this one. When I tell you, the show will end, and then you will just have to refresh your page and join the second show when we come back.
Excellent. And this is the last event for S4. As many of you know, and tomorrow night is going to be our final show. We will be guest hosting or guesting on some other podcasts and paranormal radio shows and whatnot.
Good morning, everybody, and I want to welcome you to Marblemount, Sasquatch. And I just have to do a few little announcements. We have some wonderful vendors out there. We have CM Plasma, who's the metal cutters right outside. We have Sasquatch the Legend out there. We have Jessica's Designs out there. We are also supposed to have Kona Ice will be here serving icy drinks, and so will Stephanie's Kitchen be here for lunches and everything. There's a little bit of confusion between Bigfoot and Sasquatch, but Yeti, they don't mind. But anyway, that's a bad joke, right? Tom Cantrell is here. Dr. Robert Alley is here. Judy Carroll's here. And also Thomas Sewid. And Thomas and his wife, Peggy, are going to be the first ones on the agenda today. And if you didn't get a schedule, they have them back at the back. I do want to tell you that back in the back, if you didn't do a door prize, you need to fill out one of the little forms and drop it in the door prize. You do not need to be present to win, but you would need to leave a phone number or something on that piece of paper that you put in there. Also, the raffle tickets are for sale back at the table there too, and all of the things that are on the table have been donated by the vendors that are here. We also have one of the signs, if you're familiar with the sign out in front, that all of our speakers signed. So it's an autograph sign. That's also up for a raffle. We also have a Bigfoot that's out here at the front. And if anybody wanted to purchase it, it is $200. $200 for the Bigfoot that's out front. We may be getting a visit from a very special one also, another Bigfoot that's on premise. I saw him earlier, and he'll be coming in shortly, probably to scare you or not scare you. If you're all believers, you're very comfortable around it. And speaking of that, we all are family here. Nobody criticizes other people, okay? And like a normal family, it's not Thanksgiving time. You don't sit around the Thanksgiving table criticizing Uncle Joe or something. I mean, that was bad. I didn't mean that. That's just, I have an Uncle Joe. So anyway, I want to welcome you here. My name is Savella. If I don't know you personally, hello. Come up and talk to me. Talk to any of the speakers. This afternoon we're going to have a Sasquatch calling contest. If you have a good or whatever, go ahead and sign up, and there's a prize for that. And also if you want to do open mic. So if you have a encounter or a story to tell about Sasquatch, please sign up and we'll get you up here. And you'll also, if you notice that we all have these wonderful shirts on, if you sign up to be a speaker, you're going to get one of the wonderful shirts because the speakers all get shirts, okay? So you're going to have one of these shirts. That's Tom. Tom, I didn't hear you. Tom Cantrell.
That's because we're scary when we're bare.
Oh, we're scary when we're bare. Another one. Anyway, welcome. If you are here for today, welcome for today. If you're here for today and tomorrow, it's going to be wonderful. Today will be, like I said, Thomas Sewid and Peggy will be here performing first, and then Judy Carroll. Tomorrow will be Dr. Robert Alley and Tom Cantrell. Okay? I want to thank you all, and it's just going to be a couple of minutes before he comes in. So relax for just a minute, and I'll be right back to introduce him.
So you heard her, ladies and gentlemen. We will be live in just a few minutes. I'm going to let Eric fill you in on some more of the details and talk to you a little bit more. So here you go.
Woohoo! So, like I said, if you're local, get down here, and there are some awesome vendors here. I picked up a Bigfoot beanie for like $5, and a Bigfoot sign for my yard for $5. What? 7 minutes. Oh, we all get to talk to you for 7 minutes. Woohoo! You guys got a story? No. So, in between speakers, we are going to be getting some people's stories and experiences they've had and whatnot. Let's see. What else is going on? Small crowd here is maybe 20, 30 people so far today, but it is early for a Saturday morning. We've got Tom Cantrell today, I think, if not tomorrow. So where's everybody at? So when we're talking Bigfoot, I've been talking to some people this morning, and there's varying, we talk Bigfoot on this for all the time, and there's varying opinions of whether he's interdimensional or supernatural. And I haven't met anyone yet that just thinks he's flesh and blood. What do you call him? Giganteus. There we go. Jason, come here. So we got Jason Lloyd here with us today too. He's helping with our booth. We have a display of all of our paranormal gear and whatnot that we use, complete with a 24-hour pack that we use. So, Jason, what's your thoughts on Bigfoot?
Well, somebody warned me about those knocking sounds in the woods, and it wasn't very long after that I heard some.
But have you ever experienced anything?
Just that. Just those knocking sounds in the woods.
Oh, you have the knocks. Okay. Gotcha. So we got some logistic stuff that we're doing here. I'm not an advocate for dead air, but so hold on. I know. I'm getting yelled at about talking. Keep talking. Yeah. So there's going to be some dead air on this show today, just because. We're running live for a full 3 hours, and then we have part 2, which will be this afternoon. There's some really cool Bigfoot masks that they've got available. It is COVID friendly, social distancing, masks indoors. The public health standards. So, and like we said, we are at the Marblemount Community Center. up here in Marblemount, Washington. Some really interesting, great speakers. There's a Sasquatch calling contest, and yeah. All right, and Cole's back. Cole's going to talk some more.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and hope you're excited for a good day of Bigfoot stories. It's going to be an awesome day here. We've got quite a few people in the crowd. It's filling up quickly, and it's going to be a good event. So I don't know a lot about our first speaker. His name is Thomas Sewid, and he is an artist and a researcher. So what do you think, Eric? Do you think it's going to be fun?
You know, absolutely. And like I said, the vendors are great. I mean, they're reasonably priced. I was impressed. Like I said, $5 for a beanie cap. You ain't gonna find that anywhere with a Bigfoot on it. And you know, the parking signs are $5. And anyway, back to the show.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our very first speaker this morning. His name is Thomas Sewid and his wife Peggy, and he puts on an absolutely, I love it. I saw it the first time in Medline Falls, which was a Sasquatch festival up there this year, and I said, oh, I got to have him come to this Sasquatch, and they were so gracious. Thomas he has his own Sasquatch Island posts. He also is a researcher. He's an investigator. He also has a booth out there, along with all the other booths that he does the most beautiful Native American art, and it's absolutely beautiful. So with that, I would like to introduce Thomas Sewid.
Agila Kasla. Greetings. My name's Tom Sewid. I'm a member of the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nation from northeastern Vancouver Island, and this is my better half, Peggy Seaview, and we are Sasquatch Island. And what Sasquatch Island is, you're standing on it, North America. For we indigenous people of North America referred to that continent as Turtle Island because it looks like a turtle from space. I don't know UFOs, I'm not going to get into that. I study Sasquatch. But we call it Sasquatch Island because every indigenous tribe in North America, Central America, as well as everyone else that calls this place home, have stories about their encounters or what they've seen. The big, hairy, covered creatures out in the forest. So we call our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, our website, Sasquatch Island, and we're here today to share with you insight into my tribe's perspectives, beliefs, and some of my encounters with what we call Chunahwa, the wild woman of the woods. And Peggy's going to be showing you today some of our family's regalia. To our Kwakwaka'wakw people, our chief has given us permission to share with you crests from our gildas, our symbolic box of treasure. And our highest ranked crest, as is every Kwakwaka'wakw family, is Chunahwa, the Sasquatch. So Peggy will be giving me some noises so that I can get her out on the stage to just demonstrate everything to you. But for starters, I'm going to bring you back to where I come from. I come from northeastern Vancouver Island. I was born in Alert Bay. I would go to the ceremonial big house and I would watch the chiefs host their potlatches. And I was always enthralled as a little boy seeing the Chunahwa, the wild woman of the woods, come out with her mask, and she would dance. And every family's dance is different, even to this day. And when I would ask questions to the elders, my grandfather mainly, he would tell me that every story is different because what you see on the floor of the big house and potlatch is what an ancestor witnessed. And the story of Chunahwa is what someone saw. So today you'll see our family's interpretation, but others I've seen where you see baskets on their back depicting bad children in there. Others, they'll chase a small one on the floor. Everyone's different. But when I was a kid walking through Alert Bay one day, I went to a candy store, and I was there too late playing outside, eating my candy, and it started to get dark. And I went, oh no, Jonah's watching me. I'm misbehaving. She can come and grab me with a big hairy arm, rub spruce sap in my eyes so I'm blind, and shove me in her basket on her back and take me to the forest where she's going to boil me up and eat me. So as fast as I could, my little legs would carry me through Alert Bay along the road on the edge of the water. And I had to pass the burial ground by the hospital. And there they were. Big totem poles with outstretched arms, puckered up lips, sleepy eyes, big breasts. And I knew that was Jonah, the highest ranked crest on the bottom of the poles for chieftains that had passed, because those were their memorial poles. But to me, all I could think of was in the bushes hiding was a Jonah coming to get me. And I made it home, and the first thing I told my mom was, Jonah didn't get me, I made it. And she goes, well, you behave yourself, otherwise she's going to reach hairy arm in the window and grab you. So that's what we were taught as kids. So I guess you could say all my life I've known about Jonah. My families are commercial fishermen, salmon, seine, and herring fishermen, and that's what I grew up with. 10 years old, I started on a fish boat, and I would travel to different places throughout my entire life, but I was always Tommy 10,000 questions. I would ask people, what are your stories about Sasquatch? And they would share it with me, and I would become enthralled. But then I would think about Bukwus, the little hair-covered primate that apparently is the keeper of the ghost world from the spiritual realm. And when I got together with Peggy and she introduced me to finding Bigfoot in the mid-2000s, because I was out in the bush living a rogue Sasquatch human life, and it took about 4 or 5 years for her to tame me, to entice me into Kent, Washington. And when I got there and she introduced me to BFRO's Finding Bigfoot, I looked at her and said, what are they talking about? I'm a quack-walk-you-walk. I'm not a quackatoodle. And how come they're saying that my Sasquatch is Bukwus? Bukwus is that mask on the wall over there. That's the green-faced one that always shows its teeth, but it's small and hair-covered and bipedal, and it's the keeper of the ghost world. Jonah is our Sasquatch. And Peggy looked at me and she goes, you believe in Sasquatch? I'm like, heck yeah. I lived in bush. That's where you met me. And you'd hear things, see things, smell things, always know you're being watched at times. And if you spend enough time in bush, you will see white deer, white moose, white whales even. But you spend enough time in the bush, you will see a Sasquatch. And she kind of thought I was crazy. And she took grasp of it. And she started to ask questions. And then I started arguing with the television, and I bought books, and I'd keep telling her, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm not a quackatoodle, and Sasquatch is not a Bukwus. And so she said, well, do something about it. And she introduced me to podcasting and listening to them, and then all of a sudden Wes Germer phoned me up and said, hey, would you like to be on Sasquatch Chronicles? It's my podcast. And I went on there, and I was a bushman. I swore a little bit too much on my first podcast, but I learned not to do that. But I learned that people out there wanted to hear from me. They wanted to hear what experience and knowledge I'd gained from a lifetime living in the bush as a grizzly bear hunting guide for Safari Club International clients for 24 years. What it was like being a bush watchman for a native village that was abandoned called Village Island, and how I lived out there and would plug my ears at night in my cabin going, la, 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 I don't hear that, go to sleep, because Sasquatches were whooping and roaring in the end of September, beginning of October. And I would share my experiences. And that's when someone told me about this group called Sasquatch Island, so I went to it, and it was a Facebook group, and there was an icon flashing saying, this group needs administrators. So I said, I don't know what the heck that is, but I'll push the button. And all of a sudden I became the administrator of Sasquatch Island, and I started sharing my stories. But Sasquatch Island has evolved to be not a place for me to brag and be an egomaniac. I learned it's about you. It's about sharing with you all of my experience and knowledge and things that I ponder about and come up with a conclusion and try to go out and see that that thought process actually comes up spades and I can get close to a Sasquatch. And it seems to be working in some cases. So Sasquatch Island Facebook group, the YouTube channel, is for you to go and educate yourself. And so that you don't make the mistakes I did. Don't ever throw a rock back at a Sasquatch. Because man, oh man, they get some mad at you. But we'll talk a little bit about the bukwis. And these shells I brought are called cockle shells. They're a type of clam, I guess you could say, a bivalve. It's the favorite food of Sasquatch, the Junakwa, humans, and bukwis, the green mass that you see on the wall over there. And they say at night the little bukwis goes on the beaches and he looks for the cockles that are exposed at low tide. And he gathers them up. It's very rare for a human to see them. They're so elusive, the small little bipedal creatures. Some of you from this area might have heard of stick people, the little people. Well, that's bukwis to my people. And I have journeyed throughout North America up to the Arctic around Yellowknife and further. I've been to Alaska throughout there. I've been down to Omaha, Nebraska on Indian Reserve investigating, as well as Omaha's Salt Fork Park I went to. And I heard the stories about their little people. And it's amazing that throughout North America we have so many different types of creatures being seen out there. In the Pacific Northwest, the little people, the bukwis, is getting heard about more and more. In Renton, I did some investigations, and they spoke of them being there. But the bukwis is said to be greenish, and it moves and scurries about on the beaches and in the forest like a small bird. And it's always shy, so it hides its face behind its arm. And when it digs with its hands and its feet, it's going for the choli, the cockle shells. But it's a bad thing to see a bukwis to many of the Indian tribes because it's a bad omen. To the Kwakwakiwak people, my tribe, they say that when you make a mistake as a human and you don't heed the lessons taught by you and you drown, you're a ghost, your spirit is captured by bukwis, and it keeps you in that ghost world for eternity. They say if you're in the forest and you get lost and you're looking for how to get back to where you were, and you get hungry and scared and tired and cold and you go to sleep, bukwis has been watching you. It's going to put out a piece of bark or a piece of wood, and there's going to be all kinds of beautiful, delectable foods on there, things that you love. And as you jump at it and start to devour, you've given into your weakness and temptation and your fear. And as you're eating that food that you thought was smoked fish and cod and halibut and berries and venison, you realize it's turned into centipedes, worms, snakes, slugs, and you spit it out. It's too late. You've eaten the food of the ghost world, the bukwis. And because you've given in to that weakness and temptation, when you run down the mountain and you part the trees and you see your boat or your cabin or your truck or the smoke from your big houses back in the old days, you close the forest and you run downhill. And for over an hour you run and pant and tumble and fall, and you stop and you open the bushes again, and you're further away than when you started from. And what that is you've given in to that weakness. You've eaten the ghost food. The ghost has now captured you, and it's very hard to get to the home fires once again. So I don't notice any children in here. I see a young lady over there. But pass that story on to the children so that they know that all around us in this urban environment are bukwis. They're tobacco, alcohol, gambling, drugs, drug dealers, and tell them never, ever give in to weakness and temptation and sample the drugs. Because if they do, the bukwis in the modern day has them. And it's going to be very hard to get back to your home fires, love, full refrigerators and cupboards, because your family, after you steal from them and lie to them, they're going to cast you out, banish you from the home. And just like that bukwis story, you're right in the bad world, the ghost world. So pass it on to them. But that was our bukwis, and Peggy did a pretty good job. It's actually really hard to dance. She came and did you a short snippet. If you want pictures later with it, I'm sure you can entice her into putting it on for pictures not outside at our booth. But when we go to potlatch, and I've had to dance bukwis, sometimes you're on that floor for almost 15 minutes. Oh boy, your legs hurt the next day. But let's get into Now we know the difference. Wuss, the little hair-covered bipedal creature. I remember when Dr. Jeff Meldrum, my good friend and a friend of many in here, he sold me his book in the International Bigfoot Conference, and I went home and I was reading it. Oh, I just about threw it through the wall. I'm like, he's calling our Sasquatch book Wuss. It's Junakwa. Junakwa, the wild woman of the woods, lost in translation. Because back in the day when the explorers and the different people came to study the coastal people, they didn't know Kwakwala, we didn't know English. So when it was translated to meaning wild woman of the woods. One of my advisors, cultural advisors from Alert Bay, he explained to me years ago, Tommy, it should have been more like Shrek, the ogre from the forest, because there's two of them, male and female. As a Kwakwaka'wakw, I know of the male ones. All the ones you see on totem poles and art and t-shirts generally doesn't have a mustache. And that's the female Junakwa, the wild woman of the woods, the highest ranked crest. But when you go to a potlatch after a chieftain dies and his eldest son or a family member calls the potlatch, and 3 years of mourning takes place minimum, and the family prepares thousands of dollars worth of gifts and regalia to perform the family crest, which is their wealth. And when they have that potlatch, sometimes for 2 days, it costs a chief and a family over $100,000. And they have to feed everyone in attendance, over 1,000 people for 2 days sometimes, 2 or 3 meals a day. And at the end of each night's performance, the big house floor will fill with gifts. And everyone who isn't a family member receives a gift for witnessing their family's celebration of potlatch, the great celebration of life. And when you see that happen, you'll watch all of their crests, eagles, thunderbirds, animal kingdom, you name it, it's showing. It takes hours, days to show all of the crests. But at the end, the Helicum, the chief speaker, will get up, and you'll have a mask of a Junakwa with a mustache, usually hair or fur. And he'll say in our language, does anyone here not agree that this man has not shown his obligations to the fallen chieftain to have a memorial potlatch, raise the memorial pole, had to pay for the carving of it and everything, and fed you and gave you gifts? Does anyone not agree that this man should not be chief? Of course, no one disagrees. And that's when the Helicum, the chief speaker, puts the male Junakwa on his face. Some families will actually have that new chieftain dance it. But to have the male mustache Junakwa on your face, that man is now recognized as a Queek, a clan territorial hereditary chieftain. So as you're starting to understand now, my tribe is very closely tied to the other tribe, the Sasquatches. You can go through Alert Bay, the small little community I was born in, and you'll see all kinds of Junakwas carved in welcoming poles, memorial poles. You can go to the museum called the Umista Cultural Center and see the masks, male and female, of Junakwa. All of the regalia that was danced in potlatches over 100 years ago. But if you go to the top of the hill in the summertime for tourist season, in the shadow of the world's tallest totem pole with the Junakwa at the base, you will see the big house and enter it. And at the back of the big house, there's 2 house posts. And at the base are 2 Junakwas carved. And you will see on the floor in tourist season or at a potlatch, the families bring to life and dance and song their Junakwa, their interpretation of what their ancestors saw with the Sasquatch. So Junakwa, to me, is the other tribe. And I always get asked, what is a Sasquatch? Well, when I first started being an investigator in the mid-2000s, prior to that, in early 1990, I had an encounter, and I think it was 91, on my commercial fishboat where my cabin was. We heard and smelled something on the beach just after dark. We put on my commercial fish spotlight, which is about 18 inches in diameter. And from here to the gazebo out back there on the beach, we illuminated a big male and a big female Sasquatch. The male would drop on his knee and raise his arm in front of his face. The female would be with her back to us, drop on the beach with her buttocks pointing towards us, but you could see the reflection of their eyes in the spotlight. 1.5 eye, 2 eyes. The female, you could only see 1 eye sort of under her arm. And for 20 minutes, we tried to get them to move. We threw apples at them. We flashed, the camera flashed. We didn't have film, so we couldn't take a picture. But we tried everything, even blew my air horn. But they would not move. As soon as I turned off the spotlight, you could hear them crack, crack, crack into the bush. And then all of a sudden, the big hemlock tree, dead, rotten, pushed over and crashed. And I didn't really understand what that was all about other than the sighting. So I went and sought out a man by the name of Dr. John Bindernagel, 1991, I believe. I shared with him my story. And then him and I became lifelong friends until he passed on Vancouver Island. And boy, did we do some investigating. He was a lot of fun. But he taught me so much. And when we first met, we both believed Sasquatch was a branch of the Gigantopithecus blackie that came over on the Bering Land Bridge. But through the years, I would get close to Sasquatch, and I would see them from me to this guy here. I was hiding in a pile of alder leaves when we were building some cabins in 2012, and when this juvenile 6.5-foot Sasquatch came sneaking through the bush, and he grabbed an alder tree and he stepped down off a 5-foot berm looking at the back of my cabin. I burst from the leaves and went, "Hey, what are you doing?" And that Sasquatch just jumped, pulled that tree, it bent, he jumped up, the tree sprung, leaves fell, I laughed. Sasquatch wasn't too happy, but I got to see his face. It's like a chimpanzee in color, brownish with black blotches. It had a nose like a human, crossed between a mountain gorilla. It had a pronounced philtrum, the distance between the nose and the top lip, like the Jonapa masks and what some pictures depict. Very pronounced philtrum. And it looked just like a human to me. And then as I've been in the bush through years, and then I studied with, and I still do with other First Nations in Canada and North American Indians here in the U.S., I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and or Omaha Indian Reserve in Nebraska, to Macy. And I would go there 2 other times, so 3 times I've been there. And I was introduced to Lucas White, and he taught me so much. At 10 years old, his father died in the summer. He was taken by social services, removed off the Indian reservation over 20 miles. He ran away the first night and made it back to Macy. Tried to go see family. The family shooed him away. You can't be near us because the social services and police will take my children too. As Indigenous people, we don't fear the Sasquatch. We fear the police and social services. They take our children and the police take our parents. So that's what Lucas was up against. And he had to go live in the forest at 10 years old. And that's when I asked him after many days, I said, there's no way you could live out there with wild dogs and coyotes and mountain lions. I said, Sitonga, your Sasquatch looked after you. And he said, yes, Tom. They have laws, very strict laws. I'll tell you more in time. So when I got to know Lucas, he taught me so much. But one of the things he taught me was that they have culture, they have language, they have laws, very strict laws. And every time I see a new picture of a Sasquatch from North America, I send it to him, and he comes back and goes, no, Todd's standing. He likes to lie. That's not a Sasquatch. So he's pretty good at telling me what the good pictures are. There's quite a few of them out there that are, Patty included, and others that are, Independence Day. That's one for sure, he says. And a few others I could share with you on my laptop here while the 2-day event's on. But Lucas teaching me that they have culture and language and very strict laws. He would find toys, children's crib toys that have colors and bells and squeakers. He found one out in the middle of nowhere in the Indian Reserve. He found a bicycle 2 miles off the road in the forest. And I asked him about it, and he said, well, they give in to temptation, weakness, like the puss. They take a human thing, but a big one will come around and knock it out of their hand. They're not allowed to touch human stuff. Then I began to think, what are these Sasquatches that, they would do this? We know they don't really use fire. They don't have spears. They don't have clubs usually. They don't have bows and arrows and knives. They don't have clothing. And I began to think more and more. Then I said, now I'm going to correlate Sasquatch to the North American indigenous people. And that's where I started thinking about what I saw on the potlatch floors when I saw Junakwa. So Junakwa is the human of the night. And when we humans see a Junakwa, a Sasquatch, in the daytime, they're nocturnal. We just woke them up. They're tired. They've been known to yawn, rub their eyes. And that's because we woke them up, scared them. But according to the Kwakwaka'wakw people, our Junakwa is our boogeyman. It's always watching children. It's the taker of children. That's why children have to behave. Otherwise, the Junakwa is watching. And at night, she's going to come and stick big hairy arms through the window or the porthole of a boat or in a tent. And she's going to grab that child who misbehaved, rub spruce sap from a tree in their eye like syrup so they can't see and they're blind. And she's going to toss them into that basket on her back, according to my family, where she will bring them to the mountain, to an invisible home. That's why we can't find her. And that's where she will boil up the bad children and eat them. So this is our newest regalia of the Junakwa that a good friend of ours carved from Kent, Washington area. His name is Dick Welk. He's not First Nations, but he is a very gifted carver. He has full permission from my chiefs to use the crest from our family's box of treasure and carve. And he did this mask fairly recently. The basket on the back is made out of one rectangle strip of cedar bark that I made. In June and July is when the sap runs on the red cedar, and the yellow cedar a little later in the summer, like now. But you can peel off the bark and make everything. It is our cotton to our people. But to the Sasquatches, they use it too. So when you're out there investigating deep in the forest where there is no logging activity and hasn't been, and you find a cedar tree that's been peeled but it hasn't been cut with a knife or an axe, fingernails, Sasquatch has been known to use on Vancouver Island red cedar bark to make 3-strand ropes. I'll get into that a little later, but there have been all kinds of stories of the Junakwa using the red cedar bark as well. So with the Junakwa in the potlatches, I've seen so many different interpretations of what ancestors saw. But through my life, I've heard mimics. Heard a raven at night. Ravens don't make noise at night. I've heard eagles at night. They're not supposed to make noise at night. I've heard wolves that were a little bit too deep in sound. I've heard bears, black and grizzly bear. I've heard owls. I've even heard frogs. That weren't the animal. It was the Sasquatch mimicking it more than likely. Omaha Indian Reserve, I heard whippoorwillows for the first time in my life. I think that's what they were called. They make noise at night, high-pitched. Well, I heard deep, high-pitched ones on either side of a road and crashing through the forest and could smell the bad smell. So I knew it wasn't a whippoorwill because Lucas told me too, but I also heard an owl down there that wasn't an owl. So it seems from what I've experienced and from what other people have that the Sasquatch mimics all kinds of forest animal noises. And this one here is representing the mimic of the clay, the black bear, which I've heard before. I heard the hissing and then the teeth clacking, and then I heard the deep roar that was a little too deep for a black bear. And I could smell the Wallace Yakbala, the big stink, and I knew it was the Sasquatch that was mimicking in the forest. So in our potlatches, we have a dance called the echo dance, where the mask like this one will put mouthpieces in and echo different creatures throughout the world. Well, in a few months, I'm going to have to carve more pieces for this mask, and then I have to bring it to my family and chieftains and matriarchs and display it. A song was being composed to bring it to life and dance and song, the Junakwa Transformation Mimic Mask. And if the chiefs of my family and other members okay it, then we will bring that to a potlatch, and our law, we will have it out to be recognized. So this is one of the first Junakwa Transformation Mimic masks that's been seen by people. And because it's not a potlatch, I'm allowed to share it with you, but I do have to go through our laws. So when you're out there listening and you hear those animals, always think about it. If it isn't that animal, it more than likely possibly is a Sasquatch. mimicking the different animals. And why? Well, it's simple. The Vietnamese used to do it, the Viet Cong. It's so they can communicate back and forth, letting people know. You got to remember, we always hear about rock clacking, tree knocking, tree breaking, tree shaking. Well, humans can tune into that real quick. You're rock clacking. What other animal clacks rocks? Well, none of them do. So Sasquatch knows that. They're smart. They're intelligent. So if they mimic an animal, they can give warning that there's some humans coming. And then when we were in the mouth of Knight's Inlet, my traditional territories, one night we were sitting there on the dock, just talking away, about 2 hours into dark, and we could hear two eagles communicating. But they weren't up in the trees, they were just in the forest, and they were pretty too deep for an eagle. So my friend, he said, yeah, that's Tronok mimicking the queek, the eagle. And this is our interpretation of it. Peggy likes to have fun, so when you guys come out to our booth later, she likes putting on the regalia every now and then. If you want a picture, just watch over. If she sees you with the regalia, by all means, come over. So, what is the Sasquatch? So, to me, seeing them, hearing them, and one of the things that really intrigued me was a video on YouTube where this husband and wife with their two dogs have a truck with a trailer with a pontoon boat. And they're going up a road, I think it's California, and their transmission goes, so they're sitting at dark, and they record mass vocalizations. And when I heard that, I went, son of a gun. I know what it is. Every animal under Ekekekame, the creator, must strengthen their gene pool. The interior Indians have powwow. The trappers and pioneers and prospectors, when they came to North America, had rendezvous. And this is the one she likes doing. In Village Island, when we heard those two eagles, about a year later, in my float, we were on my float house, and I heard my grandfather call my name inside. He passed a few years before. But I heard my name, Tommy. I ran into the float house with all the windows open and the sliding door open because it was August hot and I was cooling it down for the night. And I thought my grandfather's ghost was in there. I ran in, I come out, I looked at Mike Sedgmore, a friend of mine who was a native carver and a good humor guy. And I said, you heard that? He goes, yeah, it sounded like your grandfather in there. Tommy! Tommy! And I said, he wasn't in there. I wanted to see his ghost. And he goes, of course you're never going to see a ghost. And he laughed and kept carving. And then a few minutes later, we hear noises in the bush at the other side of the bay, and the slough bushes crackling like someone dragging a plastic tarp through berry bushes. And we heard, Tommy! And we could see the back of the Sasquatch. And I just looked at Mike and went, son of a gun, what the heck's he doing calling my name? And Mike, with good humor, he's carving away, smoking his cigarette. He goes, think about it. Tommy, Tommy, you're always what? Where's the tape measure? In the tool room. Tommy, Tommy, what? Where's the oil for the mix for the power saw? It's over there. Tommy, Tommy, what? Hot dogs are ready, come eat. He goes, they're always hearing you. Every summer you're here. Of course they're hearing you. So that's my experience with mimicking. And call me crazy, but me and Mike Sedgmore heard that Sasquatch call my name 3 times, and then once as I was leaving. So it brings up an interesting thing about their language. Samurai chatter that we hear about. Talk to a lot of Native Indians, they agree with me. There's no samurai chatter like that, audio recording, supposedly. But when you hear that more distinct language that you can't quite make out, that's their language. So one of the things I recommend with their language is go to the video archives, VHF archives if you can, and dig up the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy. And that little bushman who warbles and chirps and his lips smack, that's a Sasquatch with bigger lips and bigger warble, bigger lip smack. From Vancouver Island anyway, and from Omaha. So getting back to what I was talking about before, the regalia, what is the Sasquatch? So knowing they have language, culture, they have laws, very strict laws. That trailer with the vocalization with the husband and wife with their 2 dogs, and they were scared. Well, I've talked to elders about it in different tribes, and they told me that, well, they have to have their potlatch or powwow too. So nature's code is you always got to strengthen your gene pool. So what I think that was a bunch of Sasquatches converging together. And just like we natives to this day, you hear of canoe journeys. Some of you might have went to the canoe journeys in Puget Sound. And you see all these crazy Indians paddling these big canoes in their regalia, and all of a sudden they bang their paddles in unison and hold them up after 4 bangs. It's to signify that we come in peace. Well, I had canoes come into my native village years ago when I was a native watchman, and I went down in full button blanket, apron, headpiece, went in my regalia to welcome to my beach. But when these 5 canoes got outside the village and pounded their paddles 4 times and held them in unison, I told them in my language, no, I don't trust you yet. Turn your boats around 180 and back into my village, which they did. And I could hear some of the younger people going, why did he make us do this? It's hard. Because we're vulnerable. He knows the old laws, the traditions. Because now that our backs are exposed, if we try to make a move on him like the old days, you would be met with arrows and spears. That's why he did it. He goes, I'm impressed. He knows his stuff. And they came in. So I seen orca whales in Johnson Straits years ago. Everyone's talking on the radio about some K-pod or iPod, I don't know, but it was some pod of whales that was showing up. iPod, they're the singing ones there. So anyway, these whales come together, and I knew they were the residents that are from my area. And the Maginach, the killer whales, are our ancestors. So I knew they were my ancestors that lived there like I did. And this other pod showed up, and all of a sudden, the big males came forward, the bigger females, and encircling the young and the older ones were the healthy whales, male and female, and all of a sudden vocalization. And then spy hopping, fluke slapping, tail slapping, partial lunges, more vocalizations and spy hopping. And our resident whales pulled off to the side, and the outsiders were left to go on their journey. Parlay, communicating. Grizzly bears will bounce and hiss and flatten their ears and clack their teeth, rip the ground up, look all mean and ornery. They don't want to go attack that other grizzly bear because, God forbid, they might get injured and die, because everything in the forest gets pooped out eventually. And they know that. That's the code of Ekame, the creator. So Sasquatches aren't going to fight each other. Besides that, we'll be going to get into why I don't think they fight. So anyway, the Sasquatches, when we hear those mass vocalizations, and I heard it in my area, it was scary that I could hear that many Sasquatches vocalizing. I never ran so fast with a headlamp through the forest to get out of there because, number one, I wasn't invited to their gathering, and number two, there was way too many of them. So I got out of there. But watch that video. It's on YouTube. I can't remember the title. It's really interesting. And then, as time goes on with Sasquatches, I thought about myself in the late 1990s. Commercial fishermen make an obscene amount of money as a tuna fisherman, fishermen up in all through British Columbia's coast. You name it, I caught it. And I had an accountant who said, I'm an Indian, I don't have to pay income tax, Revenue Canada. So I said, oh, okay, I'm Indian. And all of a sudden, a few years down the road, I got a bill in the mail from our IRS saying I owed $173,000 in back taxes and penalties. And I went to accountants and lawyers, and they said, oh, you'll never pay that off. You got to declare bankruptcy. And I said, I can't do that. That's pride. That's honor. I can't do that. So I went into the bush. I walked away from the concrete world. I put everything in storage, and I went into my traditional territories the night after Desert Storm. And when I went in, I went rogue Sasquatch. I lived off the land, I hunted, I fished, I would eventually become a hunting guide, watching logging camps during the wintertime, doing my ecotourism job. I'd go out to party, of course. You know, guys got to do that when you're young and single. And get groceries, tobacco and coffee, and bullets. And I started to to really go into bush. Where one time I was out of cigarettes and coffee, and I remember smelling coffee and cigarettes, and I could hear a woman's voice, and I kept walking through the forest down the hill, and I parted the branches, and there was forest workers having a coffee break with cigarettes. And as much as I wanted, I thought about Bakwus. Don't give in to your temptation and weakness. And I put the branch back and I walked away. I would eventually go back to town, and then later on one time, the nastiest thing could happen to you. Your partner points to the door and tells you to get the beep out, and she's a social worker, and you leave your 2 young children knowing you're never going to see them again under your own roof until they're adults. So I went rogue. I went into the bush for months. And while I was up there, I had a Mustang floater coat, the ultimate bushman's jacket, because you rub bear grease or deer grease on it. It's waterproof. But it was drizzling, and I had my gun over my shoulder, and I was loping through the alpines. And because of the rain, I put the hoodie up, and it was that really bright yellow. And as I was loping, I couldn't hear because of the rubbing and the rain. And all of a sudden, this helicopter just buzzed me. And my friend landed his helicopter, and he said, "Tommy, come here, I got coffee, I got cigarettes." And seriously, I was behind a rock looking at him, and I didn't want to go near him. I'd been out for quite a few months. So I walked up eventually, coffee and cigarettes tempted me. And I said, "What month is it?" He goes, "October." I said, "Oh, gee, I came here in February." That's how long I'd been out. And then that's when I sort of dealt with my demons from losing my children, because a few years prior to that, I got sued for $640,000 and had to declare bankruptcy for a second time. So I hated the world. So I know what a Sasquatch feels like. I know that when you're in the forest, and this is going to tweak some of you, especially some of you men that are either hunters, trappers, mushroom pickers, hikers, prospectors, you ever notice that a branch moves and you look and there is no bird, no raccoon, no bear cub, no cougar cub, no animal? Well, what that was a Sasquatch looking at you, and then it sees you're a bush dancer, male or female. You're comfortable in the bush, on the beach, on the riverbank, up the mountain, in the alpine. And the Sasquatch pulls the branch down further, lets it go, and turns and walks away. The bouncing branch is to tell you, I saw you, I respect you, I'm leaving you on your own to do your business. I expect the same. Many hunters and loggers will say, "Son of a gun," that does happen a few times. So that's the Sasquatch, how close they are. Why don't they come sit at our fires? They hate us. They despise us. They loathe us. They fear us. Just look what we are doing. Clear cutting, fracking, mining, strip mining, fish farms, urban sprawl, rivers that get blown out because there's no trees to hold the water, and the salmon that are trying to spawn get washed out. The eggs that did make it into the gravel get suffocated by the sediments. And we just need to look around and see the hatcheries and how the salmon are crashing. Vancouver Island right now is a disaster, a drought. Salmon is so few, it's scary. The few that are making it in the rivers, over 1,000 died 2 nights ago because there was no oxygen in a drought-stripped river. So Sasquatches see all this. They have seen this. We're sitting here with masks, trying to keep 6 feet apart. We know of this thing called a pandemic, called COVID. When I have spoken to the elders, I have heard of the Sasquatches coming, coughing up blood with tuberculosis in the 1800s, coming in the 1800s and early 1900s with smallpox-ridden family members, coming to the edges of our big houses, our villages, holding their young, dragging their younger, our mates, wrecking with blood from tuberculosis, smallpox, and our chieftains telling our people, "Go inside and get our sick." And when we brought them out, the Sasquatches just hung their heads, turned, and walked back into their forest. In the Queen Charlotte Islands, otherwise known as Haida Gwaii, where that small green mass comes from, the medium-sized one called Kogi, they're Sasquatch. Well, they said, the people up there, that they went extinct, they thought, from smallpox and tuberculosis, Spanish flu. But now they're starting to rebound. They're seeing and hearing more Gogeet on Haida Gwaii than ever before. 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin filmed Patty, I was born 2 years prior in 65. There was about under 1,000 Kwakwaka'wakw when I was born. We number over 5,000 or 8,000, I hear. We've proliferated like bunny rabbits, as has every tribe on Sasquatch Island, native and non-native. And it's like that throughout the world. We survived the smallpox epidemics, we indigenous people of North America. We survived the tuberculosis, the venereal disease, the Spanish flu. So did Sasquatch. And that's why we're hearing about so many. When pandemic COVID first started, a few of us natives got together and communicated. We went out into our backyards where some are having interactions. I went to my territories where I'm trying to get close to them. And we, at dark, had 4 big sticks on the ground. We would cough and retch like we had COVID. We would snap the stick so that the big crack would let them know the alarm. Half hour later, we would repeat that 4 times, the magic number to we native people, to pass the message to the Sasquatches that we humans are sick once again with COVID. And you know what? Through Pacific Northwest, all of us communicated a few weeks later and said, they're gone. And still to this day in some of the Washington State Indian reservations, they're telling me they're still gone. So we're in 4th wave. Up in Canada, it's getting pretty bad. Do I think there's a pandemic? I don't know. I do know I'm going to be cautious. I do have my 2 shots. But to the Sasquatches, if you are interacting with them, please be cautious of that. Try to wear a mask. Try to, maybe not do it right now until we see this thing getting taken care of, and then we can get back to trying to get our Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall interaction going. So they catch the same diseases we do. Another interesting point. They harvest like my tribe. We will harvest shellfish in the wintertime. Our winter villages are all with the back to the prevailing southeast storms, so our canoes won't be damaged and won't get cold. And all around us are shellfish beds for our winter food. When the herring show up in March, our people would leave to go where the herring spawn in the shallows and live there. When the ooligans showed up, some of the tribes would go to the head of the inlets where the rivers go black with ooligans, which I think you call smelt down here in your rivers. And in May time, when the big low tides come at daytime, the seaweed, the abalone, the rock scallop, you go there. And then when the salmon show up, you go there. The berries, you go there. Wintertime, when the rivers blow out and there's no salmon, you can't get them, spawns over in November, back to the shellfish winter villages. Sasquatches do the same. Now, just a point that I came up with a few years ago, someone asked me, where do they go with the forest fires? Do they burn to death? Oh, the poor Sasquatches. I'm like, oh, come on, we're the hairless, stupid ones. They're smart. They go up in the alpines. They follow the receding snow because the turkey vultures that come here in April with the receding snow are looking for the carrion, the ungulates, the other animals that succumbed to the snows and died up there. Now the refrigerator freezer door is open. The eagles, the turkey vultures, the ravens can get at the carrion. The Sasquatches see that and they go and eat the carrion. Someone will go, Sasquatches eat carrion? Come on now. 6 continents of this planet, humans eat rotten, stinky stuff. I eat ooligan oil. Some would call it rancid fish oil. I call it Kwakwaka'wakw ketchup. Heard it's called Kwakwaka'wakw Viagra too. But anyway, it's made from the smell. I love it. I hear the European people hang pheasants and ducks by the neck with feathers and guts in until the necks break apart, and then they eat it. In the Inuit areas, they eat stink flipper. They take ducks and they put them into the case body of a seal, sew it up and bury it in the ground for a couple, 3 weeks, and then eat everything. The plains people would do buffalo jumps in the wintertime along a river or lake. They would go there and thaw, and they would eat the bloated carcasses of the buffalo. Every continent, excluding Antarctica, the people have eaten rotten food. So does Sasquatch. I'm investigating avalanche chutes where we're finding a lot of accumulated bones. Prospectors up there, people studying marmots. So the Sasquatches in the spring follow the receding snow. When the forest fires come and we're watching places like Lytton, British Columbia, and a place in California and Oregon burn away, we lose everything, not the Sasquatch. they simply watch the forest fire go by them. Or if it's coming towards their mountain, they go down at night, cross the river, up the other mountain, and watch the forest fire go by. Now, if you're on top of a mountain and you're looking down into this river, you'll see what I saw yesterday. Seagulls, eagles. They can see them too from up top. And they know the salmon are coming. Time to come down here. Forest fire season's coming to a close. Salmon are showing up. So what I'm explaining to you and showing you is Sasquatches have very well developed frontal lobes, even though they got a sloped forehead. They're smarter than us. Why do I say that? Well, you don't see them clear-cutting, mining, doing things to destroy the environment like we do. And now we get to war. Who here has heard of Sasquatches doing battle in mass? I haven't. And I've been an investigator for some 45 years, I guess you could say. So to me, I came up with a quandary. I said, okay, what are Sasquatches then? And I thought about it. And I said, you know what? Evolution. We believe that we jumped out of the trees and we quit dragging our knuckles and we stood upright and we lost our hair and we started doing agriculture, started to do mass fishing with traps, and we created in-depth societies and cultures and powwows and potlatches and religion, and we became what we are to this day. Supposedly we progressed to be what we are. But we know we were hair-covered, possibly nocturnal at one time if we believe in evolution. Creationist, totally different. I am partially creationist, but that's a whole different story on our native line. But anyway, I started thinking about it. And I said, okay, let's say gods must be crazy. How a man would drink a Coca-Cola in an airplane, throw it out the window, boop, 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 plunk. And a Bush family person found it, brought it to the family clan. All of a sudden, I want it. Snatch away. I need it more than you. I need it for this. I need it for that. You started to get jealousy. You started to get envy. You started to get greed. Then all of a sudden, a little girl goes, pop, bonks her sister on the head and starts crying. Violence. That's warfare. And the clan leader, he takes the bottle. The gods must be crazy. I got to bring this to the edge of the world and throw it off. And I began to think. So what about my ancestors? Let's go back thousands of years ago. They're sitting there going, gee, look at my big house. I got vertical posts, horizontal beams, 90-degree corners, carved house posts, big central fire. Have all of these mortars and pestles and whalebone clubs and arrowheads, spearheads, beautiful stone carvings, anchor weights that are carved of stone. And I have this potlatch system going on where we compete with other chieftains and family and tribe. And I thought about it. And I thought about myself when Desert Storm started and I went rogue. I thought about it when I lost my children and my business, my home, my tour boat, my everything. And I went rogue again. And I thought about loping through the alpines, bush dancing through the forest, boulder hopping in a stream. And I thought, bliss, utopia, the perfect place to be. And don't get me wrong, there's time Peggy catches me looking out the window going, you better go to Canada and get to your bush, you need a fix. And I'll go up there. And I'll go Sasquatch again. And you think about Sasquatches. They're doing the same. But thousands of years ago, when they were sitting there and they were experiencing their gods must be crazy and seeing the progression to what we are now, and the animosity, hate, greed, envy, war, murder, I think a chieftain looked at his wife and said, you know what? This is BS. We have to do like the Creator intended us, to live more in tune with nature. We don't need mortars and pestles and masks and this and that. So I think you and I, we agree on that? Yes, I do. Well, tomorrow night, let's tell the family, and we're going to take some of them that want to come with us back into the forest and leave this community. And I think that's what the humans did. But Ekekekame, the Creator, he has magic, evolution. He made them bigger. Soon their clothes wore out. They got hairier so they wouldn't get cold. All of a sudden they're on a cockle beach trying to gather tolly, the cockle shells. And all of a sudden these hairless humans and furs and spears and bows and arrows and fire killed them and ran them off. And they realized that we hairless ones are bad, and it's best to stay away from us. So Ekekame gave them nocturnal vision, why their eyes reflect, why they are the humans of the night. So do we look at them as inferior to us? I don't. I look at them as superior to what I could ever be, because I know there's jealousy at times within me, there's anger, there's animosity, sometimes I gossip and backstab, sometimes I feel like doing away with someone, and I think, have we progressed as a species? I don't think so. I think Sasquatch progressed to a species. I think they're the humans that went feral. They walked away from the fires and went back into the forest. So that's why we must respect them. That's why we must learn from them. So with Sasquatch Island, the Facebook group, the YouTube channels, podcasts I do with Monster X Radio, I actually quit doing it with them, but there's a big archive. Television shows I'm now doing with Wild Woman Media. We're filming shows. You can go to Netflix and watch Bigfoot Girl. I starred in that one. It was a lot of fun. Stupid movie, but my part, at least, I educate you. And then we're just about to release Sasquatch Island, the Other Tribe. And what it's all about is hopefully to make us realize that we must listen to the Sasquatch. Now, some of us here can remember in the 1970s a television commercial of a buck-skinned Indian with long hair paddling his birch bark canoe into an urban setting. He saw the effluent, the mills, the traffic jams, the garbage dumps. And at the end of the 30-second commercial, which is on YouTube, by the way, a tear comes down his cheek. Well, that would start Greenpeace and the green movement and environmentalism. Sasquatch is there to kick us in the ass and say, you're failing. You got to get back to what you have to be, looking after the creation that Ekekekame, the Creator, gave us. So that's how I look at Sasquatches. And this is totally way out there in left field. I've never done this at a conference before, talk about that. So hopefully it helps you in your investigations. For your investigations, though, the seasonal high accumulation protein that a Sasquatch can fill their belly with in a short amount of time with the least amount of energy expelled. So in other words, don't go run into the yarn basket, steel wool pile of North America, the forest. Go to the beaches at low tide. Highest concentration of protein on Earth per cubic meter in its natural setting is a Pacific Northwest high tidal flow, low tide shellfish beach. Barnacles, mussels, kelp, bullheads, eels, crabs, ghost shrimp, all different types of shellfish under the sands, gooey duck included. And then go to the rivers where the salmon are spawning. But go there at nighttime. When the bears are sleeping, the Sasquatch is out, human of the night. Magic, FLIRs, $300 for a FLIR 2 that attaches to your cell phone. $350 usually for a used FLIR 2 monoscope. I wish I could afford a $23,000 or $17,000 FLIR. I can't. But for the time being, we all can afford the cheaper ones. And we've come up spades numerous times. Go to Sasquatch Island. I share with you some pictures. If I can find electricity, I'll plug in my laptop. You can see some of my pictures I have from FLIRs and videos and things. July 29th, we came up spades. We had that Sasquatch knock off a trail camera from a stump and spin it around. You can see the trees spinning. You can see a little hairy part, look like a shoulder. And then the last picture, smile for Birdie. He's looking into the camera. And he's a blob squatch, blurry, but you can see his two eyes, his pronounced philtrum, his black face, his lips, his shoulder, his arm. It's pretty good, and we've got more trail cameras out there. I do expeditions if you want to come out with me. I live in Kent, Washington. Me and Peggy are welcome to take you out up in Enumclaw, Buckley. That's a pretty good hot spot because we're studying urban Sasquatches, those ones that have realized we humans produce a lot of year-round protein and other foods. Your compost box, your green box, your stable, your chicken coop, the feed where you store it, the greenhouse, the orchard, the garden, the pet dish. We produce year-round protein. Can you imagine what it's like being a Sasquatch and it's January and it's cold and the sleet's going sideways, raining, and all of a sudden you go to a compost and you're like, I don't know what that's called, but I hear it's called a cantaloupe, but it sure tastes good. They don't know that. It's not indicative of the region. and plums outside of plum season, apples outside of apple season, potatoes, things like that. We're finding that we're getting a lot of activity. Please do not use human-produced peanut butter, chocolate. You know that chocolate can kill dogs. We know peanut butter can kill humans that are allergic. Well, what did I just teach you? Humans of the night, don't give them peanut butter or any shells or nuts for that matter that we're accustomed to that aren't natural. Cornfields. This time of the year, Google Earth, that's powerful. Find a cornfield, Google Earth it. There's water behind, there's a green zone into the deep forest. Go look behind that cornfield. I don't do it down here in the U.S. because I'm scared of the Americans. They might shoot me. But up in Canada, we have no problem, going in. You don't even see no trespassing signs up in Vancouver Island, which is nice. Amazes me down here. And so with cornfields, we're finding all over areas where they seem to be picking the corn and caching it. Like we find piles, years of husks and cobs in catacombs, old buildings, basement of a granary, and the list goes on. So cornfields, they seem to really like corn. Our trail camera setup last week, we baited it with corn, plums, pears, and apples and potatoes. So trying to use those foods that they like a bukwus, they got to give in to temptation. You're working on their weakness. So that's why I use stuff, and I elevate it in plastic mesh bags, like an onion bag, 8 feet off the ground so bears can't get at it or other stuff. Haven't come up really with a good crispy picture, but we're trying. But maybe what I'm going to do here is open for questions, as I usually do this, and usually people have questions about my investigating and experiences. So fire away.
Do you have any questions, Eric, on there for any?
How much time I got left?
15 minutes.
15 minutes? Yep.
What are your favorite months up on Vancouver Island?
Shellfish season. October through until March. After March, you get more sun, more heat, more plankton, more zooplankton. The clams go green. It's full of plankton. So the Sasquatches usually move off about that time.
Also, during those months, your minus tides are at night.
Yeah.
And they
Winter
come out-
tides.
They come out on those beaches totally immune to people.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with the investigations we have. I went out on Operation Sea Monkey a few years ago with Todd Neese from the American Primate Conservancy, Ron Moorhead, Gunnar Monson from Sasquatch Coffee, Tom Steinberg, a Canadian investigator. And we went in this beautiful yacht that was built by a movie star back in the 1960s. It was comfortable. Best Sasquatch platform available. A boat. Think about it. Hot coffee and tea, flush toilet, bunk when you need it, nice and warm, close to the beach, rain, you're nice and dry. So I started to do investigations with boats. Right now, a friend of mine, he has a water taxi company with 2 water taxis. One of them is a landing craft, 12 passenger out of Campbell River. He just picked up a contract to be the medical service boat for the region. So the British Columbia government put on a $27,000 remote control drop screen FLIR unit so we can travel at night. Well, we're going to do Sasquatch investigating. So we're looking at probably about $200 per person per night. Now, a grizzly bear tour out of Campbell River right now for 8 hours on a boat like that is $435. So we're looking at $200 to $250 per person. Take them out, leave an hour before dark, get to the beach, do some beach investigations, then FLIR at night slowly along the channels at low tide. And as Tom stated, our winter tides are huge low tides at night, and that's where your Sasquatch is going to be. So we're going to be really hitting that hard with investigations and by bringing other people out as well. I have a kayak camp that I used to use in 2006. I was there with my sister and 2 of my kayak guides in August, and it was a huge high tide, like 16.7, which is right up to the branches. And I wanted to cut all these drift logs up. Some of them were 3 feet in diameter. so that we could roll them out at the high tide, push them out into the channel so that when at low tide it would be gravel and sand for my kayak fleet to sit on. So 2 full tanks and the largest still power saw that you can buy. After it ran out of gas the second time, I put the saw down, told my crewman throw me a Pepsi, took a big drink because I was thirsty, and I sat in a fold-up chair, put my Pepsi on the handle, and from here to the back of the room, above my cookhouse cabin on this 25-foot rock bank with trees, 2 trees started shaking like really, really fast. And I'm looking, everyone's looking, and this big boulder gets pushed down into my camp. And that thing was 2/3 the size of that table. And I'm just like, right away, Bushman instinct. Don't just look at the noise, look around. So I look around, and I look by my cookhouse, 65 feet away, between 2 cedar V trees, the V of them, is this huge Sasquatch looking at me. We eye locked, and that thing just went. And I just went, where's my gun? And they're like, it's in the boat anchored out. And I'm like, well, go get it. And they're like, oh, I got a machete. I said, get me something. And I told my sister, get in that dinghy. And she's like, what? And I'm like, Sasquatch. It's high tide, 16.7, all of the wood, driftwood, small pieces floating. She looked like Jesus Christ trying to walk across water, trying to get to that dinghy. I told the other 2 guides get in their boat. When all 3 were in the boat, including my big brave bush dog, that when the rock came down afterwards, I said, land claims. It was the name of my dog, land claims. Treaties now. Everywhere he lifted his leg, we were claiming it back. So anyway, land claims. I go, Landy, get up there and look. He runs up the bank, looks behind the 2 shaking trees, and goes, boom. 180 in the air, hits the ground, tail between his legs, goes to the dinghy first, like Jesus Christ trying to walk across water. So when I get in the dinghy, my sister pulls the stern line going to my boat to keep its bow into the big gale warning wind and waves, and she almost capsizes us. I'm like, slow down. So we all get to the boat, cut the side lines, the stern line, cut the anchor buoy line, make sure the lines are clear as I try to get out of the bay. As soon as I clear the lines, I go back on deck, and you could still see this big tree swaying, and you could hear the roaring from 2 of them. And I told my sister, I don't think we're staying here tonight. So I tried to go around the corner to this log landing that we investigate at now that had this big ship anchored out that was a breakwater. I wanted to go there. She wouldn't have any of it. She was bring me back to Sewid, which is about 10 miles away. And I said, it's a big ebb tide with a big northwest gale. The waves are like 20 feet high. We can't go there safely. So I said, oh, I'll take us across channel to Port Neville. So as I'm halfway across the channel, I say, look out the window. We're on top of this 12-footer. And it's like 15 feet to the pit. And I said, see why we can't go to Sewid? The waves are even bigger. So we get to this dock, and 4 of us slept on that boat. Next morning, no wind, go to Sewid. Never saw my sister come to the bush again. And my Dutch kayak guide, Hugo, never saw him again. I think he's still running back to Holland. But I went back to the camp the next day. On the way in with 2 buddies with firearms, rifles, and shotguns, I had a gallon of water, and I was forcing myself to drink it. As soon as we got to the camp, we opened up with guns. I was yelling in my language, telling them I will not leave. This is my place, and you have to respect me now. And then I got down there, I urinated all around my camp. Ever since then, we're at peace. But they come in from time to time, shove their nose above the door and sniff, bang the side of it, sneak in at night. So tricks. Kiota in my language, trickery. I keep forgetting I got talking to this. But anyway, I was sitting there in my cabin. I went in by myself trying to get a picture of one. And I'm lying there, and I went to sleep, and I woke up. I heard something, smelled something. And I'm sitting there, and I could hear something behind my back of my cabin. And the back 10 by 10 of it is all 3 walls, glass windows for illumination light. But the slough bushes have grown up quite high. Well, I'm like, something's there. So I jump up and I take a picture, but I had my flash on. All I got was a flash on the window and a hairy shoulder tip. And crash bang, you hear it leave. So I was sitting there working the next day. I'm thinking, hey, I know. Grab some beer and wine, go up and see my 2 buddies. And we drink and have fun. I jump in a cab, go back to the boat where I'm staying in Campbell River. And I put my digital recorder down. And I go to sleep. Next morning while I'm working, I'm listening to my snoring. And man, I was just cutting. I'm like, okay, I got to loop that. And I recorded it through the day so it would loop on my recorder. I went to the cabin that next night. I went in there, did the same pattern, always stick to the same pattern. 12 gauge against my spruce tree, big fire, drink coffee, smoke cigarettes, make the fire even bigger because there's a driftwood and I make my fires like that. So when I wake up in the morning, I just put more wood on it because it's, a little bit of flame. And then if I do got to get up at night because of a bear or cougar or what have you, I have light, my street lights on my 6-foot high fire. So anyway, I go in the cabin, read my book by candlelight for 10 minutes, turn off my candle, wait 10 minutes, push play with the Bluetooth speaker. And there's Tom snoring, ripping it. And all of a sudden you hear 3 different places coming towards my cabin. So I kept my door open. I didn't shut it that night. They can't see it from the bush because it faces the water. Then I got up and I jumped, but trying to get pictures with them, flashlight, I couldn't get nothing. But what I did was I turned the table on them. Remember when I said I popped out of that pile of leaves? I call it putting a jig on something. So I put the jig on a Sasquatch to jump out of leaves and scare it. A juvenile trying to sneak into my camp because Dad, I know, was trying to tell him if there's one human that you can prove yourself as being good at being sneaky, it's him. If he doesn't know you're going into his camp, you're doing good. Young guy didn't do it. Twice I spooked him. So anyway, putting the jig on the Sasquatch was a looped snoring of you. Brings up something very interesting I've learned. I sit in Enumclaw Buckley Pyramid Mountain. We watch the houses at 10:30 at night when we arrive. Lights go off, people go outside, have a cigarette, let their dog out for the night's let out, go back inside, all the first floor windows, lights go off, bedroom lights on, bedroom TV's on, those lights go off. Usually about 11:35, 11:45. Sports is over, husband's going to sleep. Within 45 minutes to an hour, you will hear the Sasquatches vocalize, make noises, tree knock to let each other know where they are. And that's when they're coming in. And that's when we're getting them on our cheap FLIRs that are flurry ones. But that's one of the things I find. Sasquatches, humans of the night, are smart. So what are they doing? They've gone to your house if you have activity. They've sat outside your house listening, hearing you REM sleep, farting away upstairs or in that bedroom, and they know it's time to go hit your food. So that's the pattern of Sasquatches, from about 12 at night until an hour and a half before daylight. I'm finding in the regions I investigate. Totally different elsewhere, I imagine. But just keep that in mind. And that's what Sasquatch Island's all about, just to teach you those things. Yep?
If you were to go up to Greenwater, what time of the season would you go up to Greenwater?
Never. It's a yarn basket, steel wool of Sasquatch Island. It's not open enough. And the open expanses don't have high accumulation of seasonal proteins. I've been up there quite a bit looking. I did go up there 2 years ago in winter. We would go to the gas station where Barb is and sleep for an hour, get up, and go FLIR up and down 1.5 miles each side. Because I was after the urban ones, the ones coming after Barb's food, and when Gabby was alive, Gabby's food and her dish outside. So I find more luck with the urban Sasquatches for trying to get them. When I get up into Canada, it's a whole different story. I'm after the ones out in the middle of Timbuk nowhere. But Greenwater, I wouldn't really waste my time. I've moved down to Enumclaw Buckley. We seen one right off the bridge. Buddy had ordered one of those Amazon cheap FLIRs, looked like a cyborg eye thing for looking out, a big spotlight. And then when I saw it with, I recorded it with my FLIR 2 on my cell phone, I'm like, look at it. And he's like, goes to turn his FLIR on, turns the spotlight on. Well, that thing just boom, turned, ran. But we got it. We captured it anyway. But Enumclaw Buckley, talked to the homeless people living under the bridge. They don't live there no more. They were 3 years ago. Yeah, there's a lot of activity there. And then Muckleshoot Indian Reserve is why I wanted to go there, because I investigate with some of the tribe members. But COVID can't get in there. Even if you can, you got to have permission. You got to be with them. But so I just thought, I'll head them off the pass. Maybe they're coming downriver to Muckleshoot. I'll just go up, and there's some prime areas. Best thing, get a hold of me. We'll go out together.
So are we
Always for food. Always for food.
Just like wild.
Yeah, everything's for food. Brings up an interesting thing, and I'll end it with, what do they call that? Conspiracy. So I was out back east, back in the winter, and a friend of mine, who I just met that night, now he's a good friend, showed me a video taken from a helicopter. I worked with helicopters for decades. And you see this helicopter just over the 50, 60-foot high pines. So we know it's pine forest. It's pretty open. You see the Sasquatch just running, looking up. And it goes right, left, and it jumps from me to Tom, a creek. And now his legs are splayed, and it's looking at the helicopter just when it hits, ends. I watched that video 6 times at that restaurant table that night. I looked up at him. I said, that Sasquatch died. And he goes, yeah. So we have well-developed frontal lobes. It was 1980s when Blue Thunder, with the guy, Schneider actor from Jaws, glasses, you know who I'm talking about, was riding that prelude to the Cobra attack helicopter as an LA police helicopter pilot. Well, that was the early 80s. So we know that technology has been with us since 20 years prior to that. I was introduced to color sonar as a commercial fisherman and sonar technician to the Navy people in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, equivalent to our Fish and Game, in 1985, year after I graduated. Color sonar. And when I asked questions and it got deeper and deeper, I was told that this technology has been around with us for over 20 years. You're now just getting it as a commercial fisherman, color sonar. So I asked more questions, and he put his tools down and said, Tom, I can't answer that due to a national security issue. So, early 1980s, the Cobra helicopters. All of a sudden, we're seeing an influx of urban Sasquatch coming into the edge of our communities. Why would the military want to shoot Sasquatches? I'm an Indian from Canada. I'm a First Nations. I have free dental, free eyeglasses, free education for my children. My daughter's going to be a jet pilot. She just graduated, paid for by the state, I guess you could say, the government. My son just got his commercial dive license. He's now going to start with the Coast Guard and get more training, all covered for by Coast Guard and Indian Affairs Canada. And we have Indian reserves that get millions of dollars. The United States has the same, but they fortunately gave them casinos, and they look after themselves in most cases. Up in Canada, we have Inuit, the second indigenous group. And just recently in the Supreme Court of Canada, the recognition for the Métis, half Indian, half non, got their recognition and funding. Here in the United States, you have the Inuit and the North American Indians, and the rest of the U.S. Well, you have 2 indigenous people down here in the U.S., Alaska, the Inuit, Canada, 3. When Sasquatch is confirmed, when that body comes in, or that Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall moment happens, which I'm trying because I'm zero kill, there's going to be a 3rd indigenous tribe from the United States. There's going to be a 4th indigenous tribe from Canada. So what better way in the 1980s and earlier, than to test out your newfangled equipment? Well, you look at the fiasco that's taken place and has taken place in Afghanistan and Iraq, and how many trillions that cost. Where you can take McCord Air Force Base down where I live, down I-5, with all that closed-in surveillance, fenced-in area, and the other military bases that we know and have heard of Sasquatches on. But how come in the last decade we don't hear the stories no more? Like that video I saw. Bang, 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 bang. They do not want to have the next indigenous tribe, the other tribe, recognized in North America or Australia. So that's how I look at it. Conspiracy theory, I don't know. It just all adds up. You know, I spent years, decades in bush, like a Sasquatch. I sit there, scratch my head with no TV and go, what do I think about now? So that's where I get it all from. Over 26 years living out there. Peggy's retired now from Boeing, so we're going to get back out. We just did, and we're going to get out even more. By all means, please come join me. SasquatchIsland.com is my email. A few things. We're going to kick up our website. I do sell native art. You'll see at SasquatchLegend.com a lot of my designs. I got our booth. Give me about half an hour to set it up. I got to put everything out. You'll see some of my native art and other things. And basically, it's there not to sell, it's there to talk to you. So come on over, get a card, and let's communicate and talk Sasquatch. From Peggy and I thank you very much. Please be safe out there in your investigations. Don't get hit upside the head like a disrespectful person does from the Sasquatch or end up on missing 411. So be safe out there. Always respect the Sasquatch and no kill, please. I thank you very much. In my language, halakila.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. Can Austin raise your hand? Austin? How about Ron? He's in the bathroom? Okay. Is Austin here? Come here, Austin, please. No, he's not in trouble. We didn't have anybody on our schedule for the Sasquatch calling contest, so I don't know if you guys want to swap this around a little bit and let the open mic start now. But Austin, I don't know what size shirt you are, so this is a large.
Okay.
But if it's not, if it doesn't fit, just take it out to Sasquatch Legend and he'll switch it for a different size, okay?
Okay.
And I have, is it Ross or Ron? He signed up as well.
In the bathroom, I think
Is Ron? Okay. So with that, I want to ask you, this afternoon at 3 is when it's on our schedule for the open mic. Do you want to wait until 3 or would you like to do it now?
It doesn't matter. I can do it now if we have time.
We're streaming it live, so you're gonna. Okay. So I'll let you then do it now. Okay.
Okay. All right.
There you go. Welcome, Austin, please. Both of them.
Oh, okay. Hi, how's everyone doing? So this is a little bit different for me. I'm not actually from this state, but I have lived here for about 5 years now. I got a story to share with you guys, and I don't seem so crazy now. Every time I tell this story to people, they always look at me in disbelief. If you haven't seen something, then it's hard to believe someone who shares something crazy like a Sasquatch, like you see that, or anything other paranormal. Anyway, so this is back in 2007 or 2008. I am from Mississippi, so a long way away. I don't actually know a ton about Sasquatches, but I do know what I saw. And so believe it or not, you guys might think this is kind of skeptical, but it was Halloween. Yeah. So when people hear that, they automatically are just like, all right. So anyway, it's Halloween, and I'm getting ready. It's a couple hours before it gets dark, and I'm looking for my cat. My cat went missing, and my cat always comes home. And I would tell you that she had never did that, and she went missing, and I was looking for her all afternoon. And it got dark, and I was like, all right. So I went trick-or-treating, and I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I was with my friends. And it was just, I had this weird vibe, just what's going on. And I lived in this trailer park, and behind the trailer park there was all woods, a lot of woods, and there was a creek that ran along the back end of the trailers on one side, and there was a reservoir with a hydro dam, so there was plenty of water and fish. There was always deer in the woods and rabbits and everything. And there was a not a thunderstorm, but it was heat lightning I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's just like thunder, but without the noise. I was walking along some houses, and this lightning flashed, and I was looking in between the trailers, and I thought I was crazy, but I saw this big thing, looked like, I don't know, it was just huge, and it was making these long strides, and I felt like my heart dropped into my stomach. I was like, what the heck is that? And I saw something in its hand. And then I was like, there's no way I just saw that. There's no way. So I kept walking, and the lightning flashed again, and I saw the same thing. And then I kept walking, and I saw it again. And my friend saw it, and we were just like, dude, let's go back home. And we went a completely opposite direction, and we finished trick-or-treating on the other side of the neighborhood, away from the woods. And so next day comes, still couldn't find my cat, never came home. And we went back there where we saw whatever we saw, and there was, on the ground, there was like, my cat's fur color was like grayish, like black, like jet black or gray. And it was just like this whole patch of fur on the ground, same color as her. And she never came home after that. So that's how I know Bigfoot killed my cat. So, yeah. So that's it for me, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Don't forget your shirt. Okay. Now is he back from the restroom? Ron? Ross? No, he's not here. Okay. So if he comes back, we'll use him for at 3:00. Right now, we might as well sort of break for lunch because and have pictures taken. And the vendors are out there. We also have the raffle tickets back here that you can get raffle tickets. The Sasquatch calling contest is still open. I mean, I left it back there. Also, the open mic is still open back there. And just like you saw with Austin, if you talk about your experience, you get a free T-shirt. So sign up, go out and visit all our vendors. The Kona Iceman is here. However, the Steph's Kitchen hasn't made it yet, so that is not available yet unless they come in the next few minutes. We will return at 1:45, okay? And so this is a little break for you. Since Steph's Kitchen isn't here yet, if you want, you can go to Marblemount Diner, you can go to the Buffalo Run restaurant, or you can go to Mondo's and have something to eat if you didn't bring something, okay? Thank you all so much. We will return at 1:45. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard her. We will be back at 1:45. So we are going to break off here with S4. If you're not here, you are missing out. We've got free stuff here for you. They've got shirts for sale. They've got 4 vendors out there, and they have Kona Ice is here. So come on down. If you are in the Marblemount area, we will be out here and continuing on at 1 o'clock with Judy Carroll. The last speaker you heard was Austin. He was an open mic speaker, so he just decided to share his story today. But the first one you heard was Thomas Sewid of SasquatchIsland.com. So, Eric, how did you think that first speaker was?
I thought it went good. Interesting stories. And you know, when you're talking Native American lore, that's the original Bigfoot stories, honestly, and experiences. So we're going to be walking around, getting cards and whatnot, so we can start gathering resources for Bigfoot stuff. But again, as for will be no longer after tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the last show. But you know, and like I've told a few of the speakers here, once you're into the paranormal, you never really fully get out. So, again, if you're on Facebook and you're an avid listener of S4, you can always, I know Cole doesn't really like friend requests. I don't mind them. So, friend request me. You got a show you want us to come guest speak on, by all means, we are open to that as well. We're just done with 5 years of running this show. It gets tiring after a while, but we'll talk more about that tomorrow night. Anyway, we are going to go walk around a little bit, and 1 o'clock is the next speaker.
And I'm going to adjust our S4 ending segment for this. So at the end of every show, you have something you say. But because of that last speaker, keep your eyes to the beach.